Hey guys, Adrian here from the Digital Dojos, and today I want to talk about some tech news. It's been a while. I'm a little bit feeling under the weather here. I've been cleaning all day. I got a new desk, as you can see back here, so I have this huge U-shaped desk around me now. Anyhow, a lot of news broke out today. A lot of news regarding technology, and I want to kind of talk about the trifecta of news. I was trying to decide whether or not I want to do single videos for these. I could have done a Digest 90, but there's so much news, specifically today and a little bit yesterday, that I had to cover all and just kind of talk about in regards to, rather than breaking them down singly or trying to break it down to a 90-second segment, sort of like a mini podcast. And the trifecta of news that I'm talking about, because there's three big brands that had some pretty big news leak breakout, I should say. So first off, Google's launch event for their whole, if you haven't seen the event that they were going to do regarding their new phones, their new tablets, and I have my notes up here. So, first off, they were having an event, I believe it was scheduled for Monday, so yesterday, but it was canceled due to Hurricane Sandy coming in on the East Coast, and that canceled their, I think the place they were using for the event is used for refugees, so that event got canceled. A lot of stuff got leaked online regarding prices and the devices, so Google just went out and said on their, in a blog post, here are, yes, we're confirming these devices, here are new devices. And just to run down some of it. So first off, the Nexus 7, the device I only picked up a couple weeks ago, $250 device for the 16 gig model is now 32 gig device for the same price of $250. You can get 16 gig model. This device, the 16 gig, is only $200 now, $199. I think they're probably just going to phase out. I'm not sure if they're phasing out the 8 gig. I haven't really read up on that. But they also released a new 3G model, so if you want to get a 3G model on the 7-inch form factor, that is, an option now. In my opinion, when it comes to that, is I'm not really sure if Wi-Fi is fine for me with this, and if not, I can tether from an iPhone or any other device. I'm not sure whether or not I want a data plan or some sort of 3G. I mean, 3G is very convenient, but I don't know if I want to pay a data plan for something on a 7-inch form factor. Rather, I do that on an iPad or the new Nexus 10 that came out. This is Google's new kind of tablet that instead of pairing up with Asus, they're pairing up with Samsung to produce a new 10-inch tablet, Nexus 10, running with some decent specs here. Let me just kind of find the specs here if I can find them on the notes. The Nexus 10 basically is it's a partnered tablet with, like I said, Samsung, and it's their whole kind of pure Android experience sort of thing again with the Nexus 7. Bigger form factor, coming with Jelly Bean 4.2, which is also released or talked about. And what else was there? Just the design, they talked a lot about, if you see the video, or video coverage of it, the grip, the style of, how you hold it. It can be held with one hand, and a lot of other stuff. It's one of those typical tablets. I want to say the price point is coming in at, so the Nexus 10, sorry I had to get my the webpage up there. The Nexus 10 is going to be coming in a 16 gig model. You have more options to buy from their website. It's not officially out yet here. It's going to be, I think, 16 gig model and 32 gig model. It's going to be priced around, I think, because this is, I get mine in yen, but it's going to be around $400, $460 up, and they have, varying models. For me, if that's yen, it's 36,800 yen. Converting that over, like I said, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than the iPad for the 16 gig model, and then the 32 gig model I think is about on par with the Apple pricing for iPads. So this just came out, and this is looking really, really sleek. I've been looking into more Android devices, and this is one of those ones that's again running Jelly Bean. The design isn't too bad. It has that little kind of curved in the back, and it just in terms of specs, yeah, it's beating the iPads, beating a lot of tablets out there, resolution, PPI, etc., etc. So there's a lot of big news from Android or Google today revolving around the Nexus 4, or the Nexus 4, which I didn't talk about, which is their phone that they're partnering up with LG, so that this is a whole new sleek phone. It's going to be kind of the new flagship Android phone and their Nexus phone. Again, that Android experience, or that Jelly Bean experience, with a really, really, really nice hardware and software built in. So that's looking really nice too. So huge news from Google. And right a little bit after this news, in the same time frame, Microsoft went on to talk about Windows 8, their Windows 8 launch. And if you didn't watch this keynote, there's a lot of talk about Windows 8, this being the new flagship model after, predecessor to Windows 7 phones. They talked a lot about the Windows 8 experience, etc., etc. And it's nice to see Microsoft kind of doing that Apple unification. You know, they have the Windows 8 RT on the new Surface. They have Windows 8 on the desktops, obviously, that was released. And now they're having it on the phones. So you have that unification of all this hardware and software, you know, rather than having all this, you know, going around here and there. And they're working a lot with partners, but at the same time, with Surface, they're showing that now they're doing a little bit of hardware and software combined. They're being, you know, a distributor now, and I think this is kind of the Steve Ballmer released a letter a while back talking about how they're a different type of company role now in terms of being hardware and software, like companies like Apple, and like we talked about Google doing it with stuff like Nexus, and even though they're working with partners like Asus. So there is some, you know, kind of form of unification there. The keynote itself, launch, wasn't too hyped. I mean, they talked a lot about some stuff like dealing with family and kind of like the family market of the Windows 8 and how this can appeal to families. Jessica Alba was on stage. It was kind of a Microsoft events to me are kind of a little. I feel like not I don't want to say stage because obviously they're stage events, but a lot of showmanship in terms of that. You know, they brought out Jessica Alba to talk about the phone, and you know, anytime you get a celebrity to kind of market your product in an event like this, you can it kind of dims down the whole launch itself. Beyond that, lastly, the biggest news of the day, or kind of the huge news, was regarding Apple and Apple's big role changes in terms of staff, etc. So if you weren't following this wasn't a huge release, but I believe Tim Cook did send out kind of a press release form regarding changes as Apple, and this was something that kind of dropped right around all this other news that wasn't, you know, a huge announcement, but it means big things. A couple things. One, Scott Forstall, SVP software, you know, the head of software in terms of iOS and OS 10, etc., is leaving next year, and he's going to be in interim. He's going to be serving as just an advisor to Tim Cook as of right now, as he shifts out of this company role. There's huge news around this. I mean, this is a guy this is a guy who a couple years ago, or last year, was talked about being possible candidate for one of the youngest CEOs of Apple, and you know, he was one of the, not estimated, but what do you call that? One of the projected, you know, possible candidates for CEO before Tim Cook took the role. So this was huge news to see him stepping out. And further news broke that sources said that reasons he may be leaving. He had a lot of, you know, he butted a lot of heads in terms of in the company and stuff like that. He didn't really agree with a lot of people. A lot of people had issues with him. I know Bob Mansfield, the hardware guy, the hardware manager, who is now taking on a new role at Apple, had a lot of issues with him, according to reports, and there's a lot of things talking about how he had a lack of taking responsibility in terms of downfalls and issues. And one of the big ones recently, obviously, being the whole iOS 6 maps issue. There was talk about, sources leaked from, you know, sites like The Verge, etc., talked about how he didn't really want to sign off on the whole, you know, apology letter for the maps. You know, Tim Cook, it's very rare for Apple to do stuff like this, where Tim Cook said, you know, there's a whole bunch of other apps in the App Store that you can try out, and they know that their Apple Maps aren't perfect yet, and they kind of got rid of Google Maps. So there's a lot of issues with him, and there's a lot of issues in terms of he wasn't assuming responsibility for things that he messed up on. And I'm sure, you know, his job entails a lot. Being, you know, the SVP is a very high role in terms of software. He does a lot. And you can tell, because just as his transition out, there's a lot of different people. It took like 6 or 4 or 5 people to be relocated to kind of, you know, adjust to this new role. So there's huge structure, you know, reconstruction of Apple's staff. And one of the biggest things that stuck out to me is Johnny Ive is taking on a new, or, you know, improved, not a new role, but in terms of he's getting more responsibilities added on. He's a head designer in the hardware and all that. He's taking on human interface in terms of, Johnny Ive was another guy who kind of clashed with Forstall. This is all from reading the reports. He didn't really like a lot of the stuff that they did with iOS's design. It kind of, you know, he gives them a really solid product, whether it's the MacBook, you know, the MacBook Air here, or the, you know, these unibody designed MacBooks, the iPhones, the iPads, and then they throw on the software that he really didn't think, you know, kind of went hand in hand with a device. I mean, there's talk about how he was able to do the whole, you know, one-layer screen with the stuff like the iPads and the Retina displays, that type of technology, and then you'd throw something like leather stitching from iBooks apps and stuff like that. To me, it doesn't really fit the device, and he had a lot of disagreements with that. He's not going to be taking on more of an interface role, which is going to be really interesting to see him on the software aspect side. And like I said, a lot of other people are stepping up in the roles, so do check out that information. I'll leave all related links, sources, blogs in the description below. Anyways, guys, this is huge news for Apple. I think this means next year we're going to see a lot of different focus in terms of improved software, whether it's iOS or OS 10, with Johnny Ive taking this role along with other step-up roles like Bob Mansfield, and there's a whole bunch of other different changes. Scott Forstall's on his way out, and I'm sure he's done a lot, and he had a really good character in terms of on stage. I don't know a lot about him behind the scenes, but on stage, he seemed like he really believed in iOS, and he really, in the original, back iOS 5 back, there seemed to be a lot of innovation that just kind of slowed down with iOS. Not a lot of cool, more refinements of iOS rather than these big new features. So he got a lot of flack for that. Anyways, love to hear your opinions on all the news. I'm really excited about the Google news, the Apple news. Not so much, Windows 8. I'm testing it out right now on a touch device, but not so excited about the Windows 8 phones as I am about all the other stuff going on right now. So love to hear your opinions on everything. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next video.